Okay, so I went through steps 14 and 15 in the last video entitled Pivot Table 1. So if you haven't completed these steps yet, go back there and walk through those steps with me in that video and then come back to this one. For this video, we're going to start at 16, which has us to switch to the All Groups Pivot Table worksheet, and we're going to work on that one. So I'm going to come back to my pivot table that I was working on. All Groups Pivot Table sheet. Okay, don't make the mistake I did the first time I ran through this and try and do these next steps on this one. We're going to be in All Groups Pivot Table. All right, so first thing, switching to the All Groups Pivot Table, refresh the pivot table data, and then verify that any changes we made in the previous steps are also made here. Okay, definitely do that. And then we're going to apply the light blue pivot style medium 2 table. So you'll notice when you come over here to this worksheet, you don't have the tabs up here that you need in order to put a design in there or refresh the data. You have to click inside the pivot table first. Once I click inside here, we have the pivot table fields show up, and I have the two tabs that I need. First, we're going to refresh data to make sure this updates with the changes we made in the last step for the Astronomy Society. Refresh that again. Okay, now we're going to go to Design, and it says Medium, so it's going to be in the Medium group, and I'm going light blue pivot style medium 2. All right, changes it up just a little bit. All right, next step. Highlight these, make sure they're blue. Add the office field to the filters area of the pivot table. Notice there are two parts to this step. We're going to add the office field to the filters area, and then we're also going to filter the table so that only private offices are visible. Okay? So just like I did before, I'm going to grab the offices field and drag it to the filters. And you'll see I now have a filter here at the top, and I'm going to change this to private and click OK. And so now I'm only seeing the groups that have private offices. Don't forget to do that second part or you'll get marked wrong for this particular thing. After, we're going to filter the pivot table as follows. Create a slicer based on activities. We're going to resize the slicer, and then we're going to move the slicer where it wants to go, and then use the slicer. Okay? So let me squish this over to the side a little bit, because I want to see as much as I can while I'm working. All right. So in the Pivot Table Analyze tab, I have Insert Slicer. So now the instructions said to choose activity. So I'm just going to check this box and click OK. And so now it's going to pull and it lists all of my activities over here. You'll notice that my pivot table pane went away, and I have a new tab up here for slicers that allows me to control my slicer. So the first thing it said to do was to change the size of it. I want a height 2.2 and a width 3.2. So I'm going to click here, type in 2.2, enter, and then click here, 3.2, enter. And then I'm going to place it where it told me to place it. It said F3, so I'm in F3 up here in this corner, and J13, okay, within cell J14. So again, this is a little picky, but you want to make sure that you have it placed just right. Otherwise, the system is going to mark it wrong. And then I'm going to use the slicer to filter the pivot table so that only fraternal groups are shown. So the slicer allows me to quickly just select these different types of activities, and it filters down only the ones that meet that particular description. So you can see here we can switch between several different things. Okay, so that's how a slicer works. A lot of people use slicers in dashboards. So I'm going to highlight all of that and mark it done. Okay, and so the next few steps go on to pivot charts. So I'm going to stop the recording here and we'll do a separate one for pivot charts.